Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It's Wednesday. We're halfway through the week, people. We are getting closer and closer to the return of the Premier League. I think we're all kind of relieved, at the break when it came at the time it did after those three straight defeats, culminating, of course, in the FA Cup exit against Liverpool. Like I said, it felt like a good time. And it's not often that I want football to stop, but that did feel like a bit of a good time for everyone to have the reset, as Mikel Arteta was calling it, over in Dubai. But I'm certainly ready for it to come back now. Looking forward to it this weekend. Arsenal versus Crystal Palace. Huge game at the Emirates. I will be there in the press box actually this weekend. So you get all the usual live match reporting stuff from me, if that's what you're into at the weekend. If you can't be watching the game and you're following it all on social media, be at the press conference hopefully as well. Still waiting for the time of that to be announced by Arsenal. It is on Friday, but not sure if it's a morning or afternoon one yet. We'll get the chance to speak to Mikel Arteta for the first time in a couple of weeks. Should get the very latest team news and injury news from him, find out how things all went into Dubai. So we'll look at that game in today's show. Look at how we could potentially set up for that game, the decisions Mikel Arteta's got to make. We'll talk about Victor Osimhen's been talking about his future. Doesn't say too much, but he has been speaking about his future. So we'll quickly go over what he's had to say. Of course, a player that we know that Arsenal are very much looking at. Cedric Soares, we're going to talk about him. He is edging closer, not there yet, but closer to an exit this month. So yeah, plenty to discuss. And we'll start with Cedric, shall we? Not too much going on in the world of transfers, not just at Arsenal, but anywhere in the Premier League at the moment. It is the quietest January you could possibly get, pretty much, aside from Tottenham. But of course, they had about £110 million worth of Harry Kane money burning a hole in their pockets from the end of the summer transfer window. They needed to start spending. They've done a bit of business. Aside from that, not much going on at all, whether that be incomings or outgoings. But Cedric Soares is one player who could potentially leave Arsenal this month. The squad is not massive. They're reluctant to lose many players, if any, but I think the one sort of senior player who could potentially go and not make too much of an impact is Cedric Soares. We know he's so far down the pecking order. He barely gets any opportunity. I don't think he's played in the Premier League this season. He's had a couple of appearances in the Cups. And Arsenal would be willing to let him go should they strike a deal. And Besiktas are very much interested in Cedric Soares. Is interested in him from elsewhere as well. Villarreal, one club, some clubs in Portugal as well. But Besiktas are, as I'm aware, intensifying attempts to sign Cedric Soares. We're not at the stage of them talking to the player yet or anything like that, but sort of informal talks behind the scenes are going on to see what sort of deal can be struck. Now we know Cedric's out of contract at the end of the season, and it's a case of how can this deal be done? He's on big wages. Of course, we know that. He came in, he got that huge 4-year contract when he signed from Southampton, kind of last remaining sort of figure, I would say, from that contracts era that was going on at Arsenal. He's the last one remaining. And it's big money for Besiktas to try and cover those sort of contracts. So there's sort of discussions going on about how this can work. Will it be a permanent transfer? Will it be a loan until the end of the season, when then his contract will be up and then Besiktas can work something out with him? I highly doubt Arsenal will be receiving any money for Cedric Soares if this deal goes through, if a sort of full agreement can be reached. But it's just one of those things for Arsenal. If you get Cedric, who's on give or take around 100 grand a week, which is big money for a player who basically doesn't play and has barely played since he arrived at Arsenal. It's big money. So if Arsenal can get him off the wage bill, then I think they will be fully accepting of that. Just for these 6 months, it will save them a lot of money. Whether that actually ends up happening, we'll have to wait and see. But Besiktas are very much interested in him. They've got a Portuguese manager, Fernando Santos, who's a manager who gave Cedric a lot of his international caps while he was playing for Portugal. So he knows him very, very well. He knows what Cedric's about. He's very keen to get him over there. And so, yeah, the talks are intensifying, but they're not at the final stages yet. So it remains to be seen whether or not it happens. But he is a player that Arsenal would be willing to let go in this transfer window. So we'll keep on top of that. And if I get any further updates on it, I will, of course, bring them to you. Victor Osimhen, then, let's talk about him, shall we? Striker who we all know Arsenal are interested in or have been keeping tabs on over the last few years. I've spoken about it before, that talks have did take place with Osimhen's agent. He did fly into London Colney, had discussions with Edu. In the summer that Arsenal signed Gabriel Jesus, Jesus was always the priority target. That was a player that Arsenal were hoping to get, but they were discussing to see what the deal was with Osimhen as well, and that interest, it remains. It will, of course, it will. Arsenal need a striker. We know they're going to try and sign a striker, and he is a very, very good striker who could potentially be on the market. Whether Arsenal end up actually pushing the button and going for him, I don't know. He's going to cost big, big money, and so we'll have to wait and see. But he's a player who's absolutely keen on coming to England one day. He's never hidden that. He's been speaking to Sky Sports, obviously playing over at AFCON at the moment, and he's been speaking about it. And he said, "Look, of course, one day." When he was asked, "Do you want to play in the Premier League?" Definitely, but not for now. I have other plans in my career that I'm looking forward to. So when the time comes, everyone knows I'm happy with the president at Napoli. I have a good relationship with him. I cannot lie. He has been with me since I signed for the club in 2020. Now, Osimhen's signed a new contract recently for Napoli. I think that's been signed, hasn't it? Actually, having said that, I'm now doubting myself. It's been so long that the talks have been going on for Osimhen, but I'm pretty sure he has actually recently signed it. I should probably check while I'm talking now. So apologies. I'm going to type while recording, but I feel like he signed it, didn't he? Let's see. Yes, he did sign it. I was right. I was beginning to talk myself out of it. So he signed it, and we know there's that release clause in there, which is over £100 million. If anyone wants to sign him, it protects Napoli because his contract was running down, and there's clearly big interest in him. And I think it's a very well-known secret. It's not a very well-kept secret that he is going to come to the Premier League at some stage. And it will remain to be seen whether it be Arsenal or not. But look, he's a player that I certainly wouldn't say no to. Whether it ends up being him or Ivan Toney, we'll have to see. I know lots of you want Victor Osimhen. I see it in the comments all the time whenever I mention him or talk about him. So many of you reply and saying that Arsenal need to go for him. He's the big name striker that they need that can take the club to the next level. I wouldn't disagree. I don't sit there and watch Serie A over and over again. I don't watch Napoli over and over again. But whenever I do watch Napoli and whenever I do watch Osimhen, he looks a hell of a talent. Big, strong, quick, great eye for goal, finishing excellent, really good in the air. Just has all the attributes you kind of look at and think, yeah, you can be a successful Premier League striker. Having those attributes, but then actually coming over here and doing it is another thing, though. We've seen lots of players who come over here and think, you're perfectly suited to the Premier League, but then he hasn't been able to do it, hasn't been able to maintain the sort of scoring record that they've had in other leagues. So whether he can do it, of course, is a big question mark. It looks like he can, but we'll have to wait and see. And we'll have to wait and see if it's Arsenal or Chelsea, who are a club that we know also very, very much interested in Victor Osimhen. But that's what he's had to say about a potential move to the Premier League. Now, also, I wanted to talk about this. If you hadn't seen it or you didn't watch it last night, Howard Webb popped up with his very nice PR exercise show, gleefully put on for him by Sky Sports and Mikel Arteta, as usual, yesterday, where they said a lot without saying anything, really. Although Howard Webb did admit that Martin Odegaard's handball should have been a penalty at Anfield in the 1-1 draw. Not that he could have said anything else. I've said it on this show before. It was the most blatant penalty you're ever going to get. How that can possibly not be a penalty for handball, I have no idea. And obviously Arsenal benefited from that, so I can't complain too much. But it was just listening to the VAR yesterday. If you haven't seen it, you should go and find the audio. I'm going to say what they said now, but if you haven't seen it, go and watch it in real time and see how they talk about it, because it just kind of sums up for me how rubbish VAR is, how badly it is being implemented. Because I should say that actually, it's not how rubbish VAR is; it's how rubbish the people trying to implement VAR are. Because VAR isn't a problem; it's the people that are trying to implement it. But the penalty wasn't given on pitch. The referee said straight away. You can hear him say, "No, the hand is on the floor." And, that's obviously from his view, which was a very bad view because he was kind of blocked off by Odegaard. He believes Odegaard's putting his hand on the floor for balance because he slipped. And so because of that, it's not a handball. And so that's understandable. But then VAR look at it and you can see absolutely clearly that his hand is not on the floor. He slips, yes, but his hand is not on the floor. But the VAR, which was David Coote, I think, says, for me, and he's talking to his assistant, which is Lee Betts, he says, for me, Lee, he's falling down. He's moving his arm in towards him, so it's check complete for me. And then Betts, who's the assistant VAR, who now obviously they sort of talk to and they have to both come to agreement before then doing the check complete, says, yeah, from the brief look I've seen, yeah, agreed, yeah. And then Coote, before he basically finishes his sentence, says, check complete, on field, no penalty. And it just makes me laugh when, first of all, you hear Betts, the assistant referee, say, Yeah, the brief look. So he's not even looked at it properly. He's admitting he's only had a brief look at it. He hasn't studied it properly yet. And just the speed it all happens at, and how quick they are to just confirm the on-field decision. It's just so rubbish. It's so rubbish. And it just sums up to me how bad VAR. Now, obviously, I can't blame too much because Arsenal benefited from it, and they didn't concede a penalty, and Arsenal got a point. But for Liverpool point of view, if you're a Liverpool fan, you're watching that, you just think how it's such a bad process for it to get to. And Howard Webb admitted afterwards it should have been a penalty, and he said everyone in the game who's spoken to afterwards, it should have been a penalty. The sort of independent commission that studied the incident and all voted on whether it should or shouldn't have been a penalty afterwards voted 4-1 that it should have been a penalty. It was blatant. I've had Arsenal fans on here saying to me that it wasn't a penalty, which just blows my mind because it is absolutely a penalty. And the whole thing, though, just listening to it yesterday and watching that again, it just shows everything is wrong with how VAR is being implemented, how quickly they are to trying to push things through, how determined they are to stick with the on-field decision when it's clearly a big error on the pitch. And yeah, I just the whole thing just, you all know I'm not a fan of VAR. I'm watching that last night, just kind of again explained exactly to myself why I have no trust in them getting the correct decisions. Right, quickly moving on then, let's focus on the game against Crystal Palace. As I said, huge game against Crystal Palace this weekend for Arsenal. Team news-wise, the early team news or injury news that we have, obviously Zinchenko is still a big doubt for this game. We haven't seen him over training yet with the team and with the squad in Dubai. So I think it's safe to say he is certainly going to be a big doubt for this one, whether or not he plays. You think if he doesn't, then it will have to be Jakub Kiwior at left back, unless Mikel Arteta is thinking of something else. Obviously, Tomiyasu is away with Japan at the moment. Elneny away with Egypt. Thomas Partey doing well, progressing well, but this game was always going to be too early for him. You're in Timber, of course. We got those really exciting glimpses of him, but while over in Dubai doing his training and things like that. But of course, this game is far too early for him, so that's not going to happen. But Zinchenko's the big one. Whether or not you can have Zinchenko back, Jesus should be back, and that'll be great. I imagine he'll certainly start the game. But if Zinchenko's not fit, then again you're looking at Kiwior at left back, and then it's like, what do? Do you play Kiwior as a more out and out left back, like we saw in the shift in formation, the shift in system we saw against Liverpool, where it was more of a traditional back four, I thought, for that game, and then you had Jorginho and Declan Rice playing more as a two, as a basically sort of double pivot in front of the back four? Or do you try and play the 4-3-3 system that we've become accustomed to with Kiwior moving in and doing the inverted role? So those are the big decisions that Mikel Arteta's had to make. You guys have been getting in touch with some decisions about, what you think the team should be at the weekend, or how you think it should set up. A couple of interesting suggestions here. Real Nostradamus says he wants to see a 3-4-2-1 with Gabriel, Saliba and White as a back three, Nelson as a right wing back, Jorginho and Rice holding sort of in the two, and then Bukayo Saka as a left wing back, and then Havertz, Odegaard and Martinelli as the front line. So no Jesus for him, or start ESR anywhere. Yep, I would not be unhappy to see ESR start, but it's not going to happen. I think we all probably know that. And then Phantom 6 Man 8807 says he's now vouching for Havertz at left back. Obviously, we saw it play for Germany. A few of you have been in touch and said that over the last sort of month or so. Says, if it was up to me, if Zinchenko is fit, I'd push him in to be left 8 and put Havertz as our left back. Saw Havertz play there for Germany, albeit only for a game, and he played well. And he showed so far this season he can get stuck in defensively, and his ability to read spaces could be useful for him to invert. Zinchenko should be playing as a midfielder, as he's not really a defender. Yeah, and I agree. Look, I would like to see Zinchenko playing that left 8 role. I've talked about it before. I've asked Mikel Arteta about it before, but the signs are that's just not going to happen because he's had opportunities to do it and he hasn't done it. So I can't imagine it's going to happen. And I absolutely don't want to see Kai Havertz at left back. I understand what you're saying, and I know he's done it for Germany before. I think that's not going to happen again for Germany. I think Nagelsmann came out and admitted that, didn't he? That he's not going to be doing it again. And I don't want to see Havertz playing at left back for Arsenal. Absolutely not. But I understand everyone's got their own opinion on it, and that's obviously what Phantom wants to see it this weekend. So we'll wait and see what Mikel Arteta does. Moving on to some other question and comments from you guys now away from the game. He said, Charles, and this is one from Burkamp48, and this is in response to me talking yesterday about how although at the moment it doesn't look like this is a title winning side, things can change. And I pointed to where Arsenal were around the Christmas time in 97, 98 and 2001, 2002 as well. Bergkamp's reply to this, Bergkamp 48 says, Charles, the big difference between this season and Wenger's first double, still have my red JVC shirt. In 97, 98, we were chasing one team, United. This year, there's 4 other sides in the mix. 1 or 2 may falter, but the chance of them all stumbling in the second half of the season is slim to nil. I do agree with that, yeah, 100%. But I don't think Arsenal need a load of sides to stumble for them to go on and win the title this season. I'm still looking at just 2 for me. I know at the moment they're obviously just sitting 4th. They could have been 5th had Tottenham got the result they needed at Manchester United. But I'm still looking at just Liverpool and Manchester City as the teams to beat this season. I think if Arsenal can do that, and remember, if Arsenal beat Palace at the weekend, win their game in hand, then they're going to go back to 3rd anyway in the league. So I'm still looking at City and Liverpool as the 2 teams to beat for Arsenal, rather than Manchester, well, certainly not Manchester United, but rather than Tottenham, Aston Villa, those sort of things. But I agree. Look, it's looking a lot less likely now because of the recent run that Arsenal have been on. But I'm still not ready to totally rule it out yet. There is still a possibility, but they've got to get back to winning ways, and they've got to get back to winning ways very, very quickly. Here's one from Adrian, says, hey, Charles, I'm an avid subscriber from Trinidad and Tobago who quite enjoys your content. Quite enjoys. Good. Hopefully I can continue to produce content, and you might like to start to really enjoy my content at some time. But I hope you're well, Adrian. You're a beautiful part in the world over there, Trinidad and Tobago. As many of you are aware, my mother came from St. Vincent. I've been to St. Lucia, went on my honeymoon in St. Lucia, but my mum was from St. Vincent, came over here when she was 18 to become a nurse, and married my dad, who was from Arsenal. So I've got one parent from Arsenal, one parent from St. Vincent. Very, very different. So yes, and you said, I do have a question. Do you think Zubimendi and Onana are both possible targets to replace any outgoings from midfield this summer? Keep up the good work still. Thank you. Yes, I do think they're realistic targets. 100%. Zubimendi, we know, is a player that Arsenal like and have been following for a long, long time. Always looked like an unlikely one again for this month. Sociedad doing very, very well. They're in the Champions League. He is very happy at Sociedad as well. It's going to be a big emotional thing for him to leave that club. He does have a release clause that is not overly expensive in modern football as well, of around sort of 60 million, I think. Barcelona very interested, Bayern Munich as well interested in him. I think he'll go in the summer, and I think Arsenal will certainly be in the mix to do that. They're going to have to do some things for their central midfield. They're going to have to replace some aging players, some players out of contract or coming to the end of their contracts. And I think Zubimendi, and to some respects Onana as well, will certainly be players that they are looking at as potential players to come in. Whether it happens, I can't sit here right now and say it will, but I think there's certainly possible targets, both of them, to come in and improve the midfield for the next few years. Here's one from Nath, who says, question for tomorrow. Would you rather Arsenal get the Champions League final this season, or Arsenal take it to the last game to win the title? Oh, this is such a difficult question. So many people have asked me this. What would you rather, the Champions League or the Premier League? Personally, for me, I'd rather Arsenal win the Premier League. I want to see Arsenal win the Premier League. It's been 20 years. The Champions League, at the end of the day, as brilliant it is, and as much as Arsenal have never won it before, it is a cup competition. Tottenham got to the final, for God's sake, a few years ago. So it is a cup competition. You don't have to be the best to win the Champions League. You have to be the very best to win the Premier League. It's for me, and I think that is the bread and butter. Arsenal play in England, that is their league, and it would mean everything for me to win the league. I'm not going to say no to the Champions League, believe me, but if it means Arsenal, you get to the Champions final, or you get to the final day where you got a chance to win the Premier League title, for me it would be the Premier League title. But I'm sure others will have a different opinion on that. Just a quick one to end here from Peter. Says, do you think focus on the profitability and sustainability could effectively end the viability of the January transfer window other than loans? Would be good to get your views on this. Yeah, potentially. Look, we're seeing it this month. Certainly, pretty much every club is sitting there with one eye on profit and sustainability guidelines and how close they are to it. We've seen it. There's been barely any money spent this January from anyone. There's been barely any business done. How Sky Sports are managing to keep going with their big transfer trackers and stuff through this month, I have no idea. Thankfully, I stopped watching Sky Sports a long time ago for their transfer news, but I imagine they're struggling right now. And I think it is definitely having an impact. There's no doubt about it. Clubs are worried about it, and they're having to be. They're having to work very, very close to the guidelines, because a lot of money has been spent, and at the moment wages are going up, and transfer fees are going up, but these guidelines were all set quite a long time ago. So I think they're going to have to be looked at. I think they are going to be looked at and changed to give clubs a little bit more leeway. But look, last January was a very busy one and there was lots of money spent. This one's a little bit different, but I don't think we're going to see ones like this month all the time. I think that's just the way things are going this month. So thank you very much for your question, Peter. And thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Appreciate it. As always, I'll be back tomorrow. Until then, have a very good day. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.